Thank you very much, Martin. I guess if any of us have ever been in a crisis, we know how much how important it is to get information which helps us to make the right kinds of decisions, whether we step out of our hotel rooms, whether we step out of our homes, where can we go to get help. Information and reaching out to people to ensure that indeed they understand that you know what's going on, I think very critical in any kind of crisis. Now, we've made several mentions about WEDF 2010, which took place in Chongqing, China. A midwestern part of China with a municipality of 35 million people. Massive place, and we're very excited that we actually have the director of the Division of International Organizations, Department of International Relations from China, Mr. Sun Chao, who is here to sort of make the link between WEDF 2010 and WEDF 2011, because one of the things that we have sought to do when we transformed WEDF was to not just have an event, but have the WEDF be part of a process of something, of the work of ITC. So, Sun, please, welcome.
Thank you, Patricia, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I feel pleased to be here and brief you on the last WEDF meeting in Chongqing and share with you some of my opinions. The WEDF Chongqing was held last September in China, and we had over 300 participants from 59 countries and regions join our discussion on the theme of adapting to post-crisis world trade patterns and lessons for export development. Thank you, Patricia, for your kind words on our WEDF Chongqing on many occasions, and we also consider this an excellent collaboration between ITC, China Council for the Promotion of International Trade, which is where I'm from, the Ministry of Commerce of China, and the Chongqing government. Those four parties had established a mechanism to launch follow-up actions and projects after the meeting. Right now, we have 3 projects going on under the ITC framework, including number 1, the Women in Trade project, which is to include women vendors in the Chongqing Global Outsourcing Platform. Number 2, capacity building projects on market accessibility analysis. Number 3, training project on agricultural products standard. And all these 3 projects are developing smoothly and well. So the first point I want to make here is that Patricia and ITC are setting out the target that a successful WEDF meeting should not be the only goal of itself. It is a starting point for the continued efforts for export development schemes in the year ahead. So we are happy that the WEDF Chongqing is a meeting like this, and I believe that the WEDF in Istanbul is following suit, since it touched upon some very concrete and pragmatic topics related to tourism industry. What we have discussed in the last 2 days will well guide our practices. The second and also the last thing I want to mention here is that WEDF Chongqing and WEDF Istanbul are coherent in their topics. The WEDF Chongqing has launched the Women in Trade project, and that WEDF here talked about the engaging women vendors in the tourism value chain. I think both are targeted at the capacity building and social engagement of the women in global trade. This is very important and could have a long way to go on the WEDF platform. Here we can see that each WEDF is not an independent meeting. Together, they are serving as a continued efforts towards our target. And I believe this is how we can get things done in the end. Finally, I want to take this opportunity to thank Patricia and your ITC team for your great support for us in the WEDF Chongqing. And I also would like to congratulate you on the successful convening of this forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sun. Now, you know, the ITC has a governance structure which is one where we meet on an annual basis to actually review the work of the ITC. Our next speaker is actually the chairman of this Joint Advisory Group meeting, the current chairman. But before I invite him to come on stage, I want to thank Sun for that, because we also have in the room with us colleagues from Indonesia who may be our next hosts of the WEDF 2012. And, you know, they were with us in 2010, and we're still negotiating. That's why they're smiling. But, you know, I had someone in the room yesterday saying to me, you know, Indonesia is the next hot destination. And how do we find our way there? So we know that the fact that Indonesia is a country which is making tremendous progress, just as Turkey is making tremendous progress. The opportunities of understanding how they have actually made the progress that they have, and the fact that we may go there to learn something more, as we did in Chongqing. We went to Chongqing to learn how you become such a dynamic municipality. We are here because we understand Turkey has something to teach us, and we are hoping next year to be in Indonesia to really learn again from the dynamism of that country. And I would then like to invite Ambassador Mwape, who actually was the chair of the LDC group in Geneva when he became the chair of ITC's Joint Advisory Group meeting, to give us the perspective that he's had on this meeting, because of course ITC will have its own perspective, but Ambassador Mwape represents our client countries, and we want to understand what his takeaway is, so that when we go back to our trenches in Geneva, we can actually have the point of view and perspective, along with the evaluation reports, to understand what next.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts of what I can pick from this forum. Firstly, I have to make a disclaimer. I'm not a tourism expert. I'm a lawyer by profession. So I'll do what I know best, is to try and argue a case for tourism. And I'll present thereby authorities by way of the presentations that you've heard, citing precedents in terms of case stories, and hopefully give a closing argument in terms of what the way forward should be. Again, it is my pleasure to have this opportunity to share some thoughts in what I consider another successful WEDF. This particular WEDF is obviously being held in a very important context of the UNLDC4. And we should not lose sight of the background within which we are having this WEDF. Now, this should be about searching and finding solutions for LDCs. It is about designing deliverable and practical answers to challenges that confront LDCs. The theme on tourism, on sustainable tourism, is a pragmatic response and interpretation of the priorities that have been cited by the LDCs themselves. And if they are not, they should be priorities in LDC countries. Now, we are coming from a background of the fact that the LDC category was created in 1971. 1971, there were 25 LDC countries. Today, we are talking about 48 LDC countries. And we've only seen 3 graduations: Botswana, Cape Verde, and the Maldives. So this is the measure of success, or lack of it, of the LDCs as well as the international community in transforming and developing the LDCs. Now, in trying to attend to the transformation of the LDCs, one of the things that have been done is to do what are called DTISs. And tourism, as we've been told, has been cited as one of those growth sectors. Now, why tourism? The argument for tourism. The lessons of the graduating LDCs, or those that have graduated, and those that are scheduled for graduating, is that tourism is a sector that plays an important role to transform our countries and take them out of poverty. So we've already have a lesson from the graduating LDCs that tourism is indeed a critical sector. Tourism has been identified as a priority sector for 90% of the LDCs. It is a significant industry, accounting for 30% of the world's export of commercial services. It is about a $900 billion industry, and it is also first and second largest export earnings for 20 of the LDCs. It has been projected that about 260 million jobs will be created by 2011 in this sector. Therefore, it is a significant industry and has a direct linkage to poverty eradication. As Pascal stated yesterday, it has also shown that it has some greater degree of resilience, as we saw in the economic crisis. That the reduction in the fall in LDC travel-related sectors was only limited to 4%. This is much less than other sectors. Tourism, as a driver of social and economic progress, as we heard from the Minister of Burundi, could also be a driver of peace. Now, what is the wisdom that I've picked out of this WEDF? Citing authorities. One, that tourism should be approached in a sustainable manner. And most of the things that we've talked about are about sustainability. As we heard from the Deputy Prime Minister yesterday, we should be talking about sustainable tourism. Now, what are the components that should go into sustainability? One, we have to prioritize in our development strategies. If it's not in our development strategies, you cannot begin to attack this sector as a growth point. There has to be security and political stability in order to have this sector flourish. Now, we have heard that we need to have this circuit approach for regional and international tourism. And here, I'll give you an example that most Zambians would complain that South Africa is advertising the Victoria Falls when it's not in South Africa. But what you need to do is to have a circuit where everybody wins. People start, they see the attractions in South Africa, they see the Victoria Falls, hence you create a circuit in which everybody wins. So a circuit approach regionally and nationally is important. There's been emphasis on the role of the state in policy, legal, and regulation creation. Now here, Dr. Supachai took time to talk about the role of the state. And I have to give again an example of Zambia in this regard. Some time back in Zambia, in order to set up a hotel, you needed to go to obtain about 50 licenses for you to start the business of hotelier. The idea now is to try and reduce those licenses. Why can't you be given one hotel license which will enable you to trade in alcohol, it will enable you to have tour operators and so forth. So the idea is to try and streamline the licensing process. Empowerment of rural communities and sharing of benefits for the communities where these tourist attractions are. And this was an experience